Facebook, and we just hit. Let's get this going. Very excited to have Amit Walia today, but we are on Reality Check with Rishi, our daily podcast, where we are talking about coronavirus. And today we'll talk about the impact upon technology, upon our innovation economy. It's Tech Thursday, and we have a very special guest, Amit Walia, with us. He's the CEO of Informatica, and we'll talk a little bit about the whole data-driven world in the context of post-coronavirus. But let's talk about what's going on today. So just a couple of days back, Dr. Cody from Santa Clara County has basically announced a cautious optimism in terms of how we are dealing with our new and active cases. And 5,200 new cases here in Santa Clara County. Still the number is high, but seemingly it's leveling off. And today we have almost 677,000 cases in the United States. Last week it was actually 500,000, so we are growing pretty dramatically. And with about 57,000 recoveries and 34,000 deaths. So 2 million cases globally. So this is definitely a pandemic of pretty high proportions. And the good news is we have in Santa Clara County, we have the drive-through testing. I was very impressed with South Korea when they first announced. And so this is actually at the sports center with Milpitas. So it's a joint effort between Santa Clara County and the city of Milpitas. And the testing, you can go through the drive-through and get a test kit and get tested between 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And the current the social distance guidelines by the White House is enforced all the way till, or rather recommended till May 1st. And today the White House rolled out guidelines in terms of how we can get back to the normalcy of our economy. And there are three major criteria as part of that. And for example, if a state would like to get back to normalcy, they should have 14 days of leveling off or a dip in terms of the number of new cases. And then talk about testing facilities. We need to have testing facilities readily available in the state with test kits, I presume. And thirdly, with respect to the ability to serve the patients with hospital beds, and also with the PPE, with the personal protective equipment. And that has been a huge handicap so far with respect to the story that played out with the pandemic and how America was sort of completely unprepared in comparison to many of the countries like South Korea and Singapore that were completely geared up to address this pandemic on the grounds of their success, or rather the failure that they had with the H1N1 back in 2001. So I presume that America will get its act together for the next one, but we are currently dealing with lots of economic challenges. More than 22 million Americans have lost their jobs, filing for unemployment, and some economists are estimating about 16% unemployment. And that would get us closer to the Great Depression from 1932. Those numbers were pretty stark, and we are sort of sliding in that range. And the small business, the stimulus paycheck, for example, the Paycheck Protection Program, that was $350 billion. That's completely exhausted. That's what we heard today. And with only 6% of the businesses been catered to so far. So our work is cut out in terms of what we need to do and how America can get it back together. But the issues we have right now is when we look at the economic challenges and the impact to working families, with so many losing their livelihoods and the paycheck taking a hit. The private, our VC community has been waiting for their own stimulus package, but there are some issues with that. And it's been sort of like a roller coaster ride for them because they have been promised that we'll get it, and then they did not. So, Silicon Valley does dominate the world economy. We are the 19th largest economy of the world. And it's prudent that the startups here are taken care of. So today we have about 3 startups a day that are folding. Yes, 3 startups a day. And that's the number I heard from different sources. And but there are companies that are innovating. For example, Cepheid in Sunnyvale, they were approved with their test kits at 45 minutes. But then we had Abbott Labs that came out with the 5-minute test kit. And on Tuesday, we actually had a medical doctor team as part of our Healthcare Tuesday. And one of the doctors on the panel, they were talking about the fact that they already have the Abbott Labs kit. And they are actually putting that to use. So it's an opportunity, I guess, when you have an issue, when you have a crisis, it's an opportunity for startups to come out and play ball and be there to serve the people, provide customer service and take care of people. And Johnson and Johnson, we heard today that they have basically rolled out a vaccination that will be, or in the process, that will be ready by next year, early next year, which will be pretty rapid. I mean, typically it takes about a year and a half. And they are talking about billions of vaccinations that will be ready by then. So they are gearing up and they are doing all they can, because looks like vaccination is probably the easiest fix for our economy to get on track. In the meantime, we are seeing that in Silicon Valley, telemedicine is booming, and big business, because all the doctors they are hunkered down in their home offices too, and they are providing assistance to patients based upon phone calls and phone conversations and diagnostics that they are running. So Google's Project Baseline, it went live a few weeks back, an online health information platform that was run by Verily, and that hit quite a bit of challenges early on, but hopefully it's back together now. But there was a fair bit of collaboration that Google did with the California Governor's Office and the California Department of Public Health. So it sounds like there is a need to have a collaboration between our public and private sector. So we'll talk a little bit about that with Amit. And there are countries around the world that are actually converging just around this topic. For example, in London, a call was made for Digital Dunkirk. What is Dunkirk? Essentially, it was referring to a famous World War II battle in which lots of commercial ships and small private ships were engaged to go out there and pick up Allied forces from Dunkirk, France. So can Silicon Valley provide different applications? I believe they can. When you look at the challenges that we had with the PPP payout and the EIDL, the stimulus loan packages for our businesses, it fell flat because the website was not quite kosher. It was crashing initially, and just lots of challenges. And I believe that if we engage the right type of partnership between Silicon Valley Tech and the public sector, between Washington, I think the story would be much more better than compared to what it played out. Electronic medical record, we keep talking about that. President Obama rolled it out. I'm pretty sure there'll be startups engaged to see how we can do some very prescriptive DNA matching testing to figure out, who is more susceptible to these types of virus issues. So driving the trifecta of science, technology, and public policies can be a quick panacea to deal with such situations. So let's get to our special guest. I'm very excited. We have Amit Walia, CEO of Informatica. So let's provide a quick perspective of who Amit is. And so Amit has been the CEO since earlier this year, and since January 2020 to be precise, at the leadership role in Informatica, and he was the president products and marketing responsible for Informatica's product and market strategy. He previously served as Informatica's EVP and Chief Product Officer. He's been with Informatica since 2013, and he's led the company's product organization, delivering products and solutions to extend leadership in core markets and establishing leadership with like the master data management, the intelligent cloud services, and many more portfolio of products. Amit has also led Informatica's innovation in artificial intelligence through the launch of Claire. And under his leadership, many of his, or almost all the products ended up in the Gartner's leadership quadrant. So prior to this, Amit was at Symantec, Intuit, and McKinsey. He's got an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University, and bachelor's from IIT Varanasi. So welcome, Amit. Delighted to have you. And we would love to have you get the ball rolling with a quick intro of yourself. Where do you live? How long have you lived there? Anything you want to talk about the family, anything personal that'll set the stage for our future discussion. Thank you again, Amit, for taking the time. And we are also delighted to have Amit's wife, Avartika, on the call. So welcome both of you. Amit, take it from here. Okay, Amit, are you on mute? Let's see. Amit, you're on mute, I think. Yep. Yep. All right. Here we go. And I don't see the audio yet. Let's see if I can get that. Yeah. Go ahead, Amit.
All right. Yes.
Yep.
Can you hear me okay, Rishi?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be on with you. Obviously, as a resident of Saratoga for now, almost 12 plus years, it's a great pleasure to be on a show with you. We've been here for a long time, and since our kids actually didn't even start school, pre-kindergarten. So I have two boys, and so we moved here. We love the community here, and obviously, it's such a thriving community. Even though Saratoga is a small town, but I think we definitely punch above our weight without doubt. So definitely been here for a while, two kids. My elder one is a high schooler, younger one is a middle schooler. Both go to Saratoga public schools. So that's my journey here. Obviously, you covered a lot about Informatica. So once again, delighted to be on here with you and love to take the conversation forward.
Beautiful. And Amit, for this podcast, we always talk about pivoting because that's what we do quite well here in Silicon Valley. And so, let's talk a little bit about how you are sort of handling the issues of the coronavirus and how we are hunkered down at home, and any specific pivoting that you're doing at a family front or at the business front, anything that you would like to talk about.
Well, I must say that I am here with a nice glass of wine. So that's one pivot I have definitely done. You end your day with a glass of wine after you're on a Zoom call for a full work day. Obviously, a lot has changed. I think, needless to say, huge pivots have happened for all of us. We've gone from being in the office, being social with each other, and I think a lot of us are extremely social, to being hunkered in front of a webcam. That's hard. Look, as a family, it's been a while. It took a little bit adjustment to make. I have to say, I usually travel a lot, so I think it took a while for my wife and kids to get comfortable with me being at home all the time. So we found our happy medium. We definitely found some ways to keep ourselves sane. I try to go out personally for a walk during the day. I do a couple of one-on-ones off the camera, just kind of regular phone calls, so I can walk and just keep clock some steps. As a family, we try to go for a family walk at the end of the day if we can make it. Cooking has become definitely, I can say, for a lot of people, the one place where you can all get together, although getting groceries seems like to be the new going to the war front. It's a lot of effort. So those are definitely new things you've discovered. On the work front, definitely, it took a definitely huge pivot. I mean, we were ahead of the curve. Before the government regulations came in, we actually had our employees all over the globe started working from home. So we obviously had to move very rapidly and figure out whether all the infrastructure and everything can hold the test of everybody working from home, and we can attend to our customers, we can run our business. So that happened very rapidly. And and obviously making sure that our facilities are safe, so our employees are safe, all those kind of things that we had to absolutely take care of. And that was a 24/7 effort we created a small business continuity team. And good news is that we did that. All of our employees are working from home. Business just kept going. We closed a quarter. I took over the role as a CEO, as you said earlier this year. So I had to close my first quarter as a CEO with a very new working situation. Let's say I didn't plan for that at all, but heck, we kind of did that. So lots of new things that we did, but we learned a lot.
For sure. And you have taken the helm of the ship in pretty turbulent times. And I guess you're ready for that ride, and it's going to be very interesting. But I'm sure with your capabilities and abilities, you will step up and take Informatica in the right direction. So let's talk a little bit about, you touched upon it briefly. One is when you talk about the family and the bonding that we're going through. Interesting story. My wife, between her calls and all the meetings that she has been having, having to feed our two boys who are constantly hungry, she was getting stressed out. And then I reminded her, look, when will we have this situation again where all four of us are just stuck and we have no way out, right? I think we should try to enjoy these moments, So that's the silver lining, right? We see how families are bonding together, discovering moments of fun. We also see how the Earth, planet Earth has been cleansed. So tell us about, how will this evolve? Will this world be ever the same again? Will it ever get back? When you look at the world before coronavirus hit us, it seemed like, wow, what was that? And where are we today? So do you see some normalcy getting back, or will it be a totally new world?
Well, I think my personal belief is that it will be a different world. Look, some things will get back to normal for sure. I mean, we are all human beings are social animals. We will all definitely find at some point of time to get out there, meet each other, go to sporting events at some point, go to family gatherings at some point where we can meet with each other without the fear of the virus or anything. But I do think some things will fundamentally change. If you look at the world around us, we have learned that I'll give you some direct examples. I mean, I personally travel a lot to meet customers and our partners across the globe. And, in the world of, closing a business, it's a norm that we've come to believe in. But I've been doing video calls with our customers and partners across the globe, and it's pretty comfortable. I mean, actually, everybody's pretty comfortable with that. So I think that the world as we came to live in such a tectonic shift, it changes. And I do think it will change. People will figure out that there is a new normal, that you can do things differently, and different ways of working will emerge. I mean, I think definitely education will change along the way. How remote education can be delivered with the help of video and obviously technology will actually play a very pivotal role in taking education to far-flung lands. And by the way, even actually breaking down the world barriers in that context. I do think that in the context of certain new technologies that will emerge, robotics, automation, AI driving, those kind of things that will emerge a lot, definitely. I actually do think that people will realize that in some ways, traveling for everything is not necessarily required. So that obviously has so many cascading impacts that you can see. So I definitely see, by the way, simple things like even running a business 100% remotely, we figured we can do that. So now you can, in some ways, it opens up the borders for you to place your company. It doesn't really limit you to one geographic location in a way, right? So I definitely think that there will be fundamental shifts that will happen out of this. I mean, once a 100-year thing definitely creates new paradigms. While some things will definitely come back to normal, but I do think that there will be a whole new slew of things that will come out. Look at, you talked about telemedicine, remote medicine. Those kind of things are just going to become very different. It's going to be very easy for you to kind of get in front of a camera and talk to your doctor and kind of give them, we can do online testing of how your health is and for you to get recommendations. You don't have to go to a clinic to be tested anymore. So I do think things definitely will change.
That's great. So let's talk about, this is a discussion I was having with one of my buddies as we were talking about what's going on in Washington and with all these economic stimulus packages, because their need is from top to bottom. Are there any specific data models that could help drive these types of decisions? I mean, you work in a data-driven company. I mean, that's your solution. But when you look at the challenges that coronavirus is imposing upon us, where do you think, how could we have adopted certain tools to make sure that we can tweak the dials in the most appropriate manner so that we can guide the economy back on track as quickly as possible compared to, sort of like trying to do this and that without any sense of that data, right? So would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Look, I think it's in some ways unfortunate that a country like ours, where we actually do have lots of good data, we have not necessarily made very, what I call data-driven decisions. It's not like we did not have information on if X happens, what will be the impact on our healthcare systems? What will be the impact on what our, let's say, the hospital bed capacity is, the ICU capacity is, the ER capacity is, if scenario A plays out, what one should do versus scenario B. I mean, we do that for a lot of things. I mean, I think in a lot of things we do as a country fantastically well in playing out scenarios. I would say that when we go to war, we play out 5 scenarios before we pick a choice. So I do think that as a country, we are extremely rich on what we collect the information. but we have definitely been behind the eight ball in proactively processing it, analyzing it, and converting that to some proactive fact-based models with which we can take decisions. And I think that I would say arguably is, for a lack of a better word, a failure that we are staring at. Now, one can never plan for a once-in-a-generation event like that we are stuck with. But with the help of data, we would have made a lot more faster decisions. Like if you watch Andrew Cuomo's press briefings, which I think are extremely informative. And today morning, he was talking about what is the ratio of the number of people that gets infected from one infected patient. Those kind of statistical models exist. If we had done those analyses right at the very upfront, we would have realized that basically one person can impact 1.3 or 1.4. And if we can take it down to 0.9 or 0.7 or 0.4, we can considerably reduce the risk of number of people getting sick. That's why it actually goes and basically impacts our hospitals or creating deaths. So I think definitely that's an area where as a country we will need to invest in. And I do think that that's something that I see, by the way, right now, a lot of companies and the government investing in, but I think we could have done a far better job walking into this. Or even when we walked into this, reacting to it.
Yep, makes total sense. And there is a lot of movement that needs to happen with respect to how our public sector is adopting data to make relevant decisions, to bring things back on track, whether it's addressing the spike in coronavirus afflictions that we see, or whether it's trying to figure out, who needs the money the most at this point and how to get that money to them quickly. And I don't think so we are working on both fronts adequately. That brings me to a question on Informatica, but I'll pick a question from the audience, and it's
Sure.
about Informatica. And Sandeep Jain is on the call. So Sandeep, would you like to ask your question? Just unmute yourself and you can ask the question. Okay. Okay. Let's see if I can unmute Sandeep. Okay. So the question is, Informatica has always been ahead of the curve in data-driven journey. What type of data-driven question you see your customers asking today, Amit? Now that we are in the post-COVID, sort of not quite out yet, but in comparison to the pre-COVID-19 phase, what questions are they asking you?
So I think I know there are two types of questions that I can break it into. One is related to what customers are running their businesses as, what they were running their business as, and what kind of business they are walking towards. So those are more business questions. And there are some very specific healthcare related questions. So one is obviously definitely a lot of customers in the short term are right now focused on, hey, how do I drive more? Look, everybody is looking at preserving their cost. The steep decline in obviously the economic activity has forced every company to step back and look at where they're spending their money. So two questions companies ask, hey, how can I first make sure we can analyze all of our cost structure very well, do all kinds of scenario planning, and then tied to that is how can I improve the productivity of my operations? How do I do things? How do I maximize the value of the investments I've already made? So as an example, customers build a lot kind of data analytics infrastructure. How do I derive more value from it so I can do analytics with more with less, given that nobody can spend a whole lot more in the short term? So that's one kind of questions we get. The other one is that, look, customers leverage data a lot to drive better customer experiences. And I think all of us can imagine that each one of us are a little bit going to be more careful with how we spend our dollars. So there's going to be even more maniacal focus on how do you create better customer experiences so I can serve my customers better. So I can obviously kind of make sure that they come and invest in my services and products. On the healthcare side, by the way, we actually, as a part of our values, we actually gave a lot of our customers, especially healthcare customers, free access to access Informatica product capacity to run more analytics. There's a lot of splurge in customers doing testing, analytics. So we've given them free offerings of ours. So in that case, they're looking to basically do analytics on, for example, how can the vaccine be testing the vaccine? That takes a lot of infrastructure and analytics to basically do that. Or the point you were making, Rishi, basically looking at analyzing as to where people are located. What is the spread of the virus? or companies that are looking to basically set up, the alliance that the president announced. How do we create these better locations that have the best density for people can come for remote testing? So all of those kind of things are also happening right now to make sure that we can reach more people in terms of helping them.
Makes total sense. And let's go on to the next question, which is, what we would like to talk about was, this is a crisis playing out, and the internet was born at DARPA. And in terms of policies, what can we here in Silicon Valley make use of, help from the like Fed policies that could be enforced out in Washington. And so the future of Silicon Valley is at stake. I mean, these are dire times, and it's not going to be business as usual. The resources are going to be very tight. And so where do you see, like, what kind of help would you like to receive from from Washington to ensure that we can get Silicon Valley back on track as quickly as possible? And what kind of a public-private partnership would you like to see, specifically when we talk about the economic dials and making sure that we're making the right choices? What would you like to see going forward?
It's a broad question. So I'll put it in a couple of categories. Obviously, one is, if I think about the startup economy that Silicon Valley is very well known for, I do think that, a lot of startups, obviously, that's where innovation has come a lot from Silicon Valley, and definitely in the space of healthcare or obviously biotech, areas that are obviously critical as we speak. I think that there is an opportunity for the federal government, or including the state government, to go help some of those startups who may have great ideas, but they may not have the financial wherewithal to survive a difficult time like this, to make sure that we don't lose good ideas to just where capital is, right? Unfortunately, look, in our economy, there is a massive diversion of the haves and have-nots. We talk about the 1% and the non-1%. It's very similar even in when you look at companies. There's large companies that sit on vast pool of capital. And there are small companies that basically have a very small set of capital. They may have great ideas, but they don't have the capital. And in a time like this, they obviously fold. So I do think that if there is a way to make sure that best ideas can come out and then don't die or collapse under the lack of capital, that would be one. Second is, I do think that, to me, it's a Silicon Valley thing. I think, Rishi, you've talked about that a lot, the whole exodus from Silicon Valley. And I think, look, great minds are dispersing from here. I do think that we'll have to think creatively how we bring Silicon Valley back to a place where it is competitive to both in terms of the cost. The cost of housing is one great example, which basically is very, very difficult for an average, even when we hire fresh engineers, for them to come in here and just rent out their first apartment, it's hard. These are very basic things that we take for granted, right? So I think that basically making sure that the overall cost structure somehow can be more affordable will, I think, go a long way in terms of continuing to attract good talent and making sure good talent stays here for a longer period of time. So to me, I'll put it in two categories where I do think that government or policy can play a role.
Got it. So let's, I want to continue talking on this topic, Amit. So far, all the capital that is infused into Silicon Valley high tech has come from venture capital, angel investors, folks who understand the world of tech very, very well, and they are able to make very smart choices. And it's a convergence of the best of minds, the best of DNA that comes here to the Valley. It has become a fabulous ecosystem. But now let's look at Washington. Now, given the fact that, I think the money will be a little scarce, do you think that we need an infusion of capital from Washington to help out the innovation economy here, to help out startups in ensuring that we are addressing the needs of the post-COVID-19 world? I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and we should not, like you said, we should not be curtailed because of a lack of funding resources.
Why not? I agree with you. Again, as I said, if I go back to, if you think about one of the areas where I think Silicon Valley has not necessarily been at the cutting edges about all things related to biotech or all things related to tech in the context of, let's just say, creating new medicines or ways of basically solving healthcare. cost of healthcare, and I do think that government has a role to play here. I mean, the cost of healthcare in our country obviously has skyrocketed, and I think it has become less affordable for an average person to afford healthcare. I mean, and forget average person. I mean, it's unaffordable for even a middle class person living in Silicon Valley, even though they may be comparatively far more well off than a middle class person, let's say, living in some other part of the country. So I do think that there are specific areas where the government probably has, I think, an economic reason to intervene. It's not just charitable reason, because I think it will overall drive the cost of managing those things at the government level down. Healthcare is one big area where we carry such a big cost as an economy. So even if you pick that area in particular and said, look, whether it's medical equipment, whether it is biotechnology, and we can go through the whole value chain, or whether it is basically, electronic claim management, if we can take that whole value chain and reduce that cost to innovation, that itself, I think, will be very worthy and economical for the federal government to kind of make an investment in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And essentially, it's a big opportunity, because I think when you look at investment that will happen in telemedicine, investment that will happen with AI, ML solutions that need to be rolled out, investments in healthcare, I think that's the imperative now, and it behooves
I'll give you, it just triggered and I thought, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I mean, I'll give you a great example. Cancer drugs have typically no more than 25% success rates, because they just don't. So basically, the average success rate of a cancer drug is no more than 25%. And if you, and we've been involved in it with a couple of hospitals who do a lot of research where they leverage our products and technologies to do a lot of analysis, where if you actually take the individual person, like let's say you and me, all of our statistical data, all of our DNA data, and you map it against the atoms and molecules and the components of the cancer drug, and you can personalize that drug, it has been proven that the success rate of that medicine can increase to 50 to 60%. So from 25%, it can go north of 50%. That's a massive improvement, right? So to me, those are areas that I do think that a government can get involved, because it overall reduces the burden on the overall economy. It's economic more than, I think, just as I said, a good thing to do. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thought I'll give you that example.
No, that's an excellent point, Amit, because when you look at our healthcare cost, it's so expensive. We spend so much on healthcare, and it's not a very effective program that we have right now. But if we are able to create efficiencies with data-driven medical decisions, so let's talk a little bit about in the context of coronavirus. If we are able to look at our DNA structures, we are able to look at the genetic pool, and we are able to figure out that, okay, here is a segment of population that is most at risk. Let's have them quarantine, and the 80% remaining population can go about and function and do what they can. So that story would make it so much easier on the economy. And then when you look at the ability to run diagnostics, that when we are collecting data from the field today, as patients are recovering, there are about 57,000 patients that have recovered in America. And what led to those types of decisions that were made by the doctors? I don't think so. There is the ability to collate that data and make certain recommendations to doctors across the United States. In fact, this was a question I asked our medical panel, a bunch of doctors on our Tuesday discussion, and they apparently do not. And so that's the opportunity. And so a company like Informatica can definitely be on the forefront of that, along with lots of the other data management solution companies here in the Valley. And I come from one, from IBM itself, and we used to talk about predictive analytics. I'm sure we have predictive analytics solution in the context of Informatica and healthcare. Amit, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, look, you touched on a lot of very important topics, but absolutely, look, today, technology innovation has come such a long way. With the help of AI and ML, we can actually genuinely predict a lot of good stuff. I mean, I'll give you a commercial example where companies are using that, and why can't you bring that to the world of solving these kind of healthcare issues, right? Where the costs are so crazy. Without naming names, I mean, aircraft engines. I mean, you know, companies who basically sell aircraft engines, basically, you know, there's a classic maintenance schedule. You bring the aircraft engine back, let's say every X months or X years, and you maintain it, and blah blah blah. It goes back into the plane, and it comes back for a regular schedule. Or by the way, an oil rig, you have oil wells, and they have a classic maintenance schedule. With the help of collecting sensor data from that, which is like the DNA data you're talking about. Think of this way: sensor data is just like a lot of data that we emanate from our body, right? Today, we have our customers who bring that in, leveraging our tools, and they can predict that even if they have done a regular maintenance, let's say of an oil well, which costs hundreds of millions of dollars to maintain, they can predict that, boy, it can go down in the next week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. So maybe we should go do what I call predictive maintenance on it. Preventative maintenance based on predictive analytics saves them hundreds of millions of dollars of cost. Same concept can be applied to all of us. Like the point you were making, right? Hey, look, if obviously, if we provide our information, keep it anonymous, of course, that's where data privacy comes into play. But we can predict or even know who is at risk, and whether it's good for them to be safe so that they can be, by the way, taken care of, and keep the rest of the population at bay. So much of those technology innovations can be applied to the real world. We just have to open our eyes and be willing to go make those decisions versus more emotional gut-based decisions, which generally, look, data always comes out right. Whether we like it or not, data always comes out right.
For sure. Following the data, you cannot go wrong with that. So that, you know, it's a great segue to my next question, Amit, based on what you just said. And so here is my question. You know, when you look at, there were 3 components of what President Trump was talking about today. What would it take for us to get back our economy, to have an open economy that we used to have? And that is, you know, to have those PPP equipment, healthcare systems, testing, all that kind of stuff. What he did not talk about is this: contact tracing. And, you know, when you look at South Korea, patient 31, I mean, they have written like a whole white paper on patient 31, who went out and infected like 1,200 people or something. And that was really the escalation of coronavirus in South Korea. Now, you know, how would you feel? This is a sort of it's going to be a little controversial question, but I'll pose it anyway. And so the question is, you know, there are lots of HIPAA challenges, privacy challenges here in the United States. And so the medical professionals, they are sort of unwilling to address that because they are tied down by policy. But then if we do not have contact tracing, then that becomes a big problem for us, because how do we go out and figure out, you know, who has been in contact with whom? So Google has an application that is ready to be used for this contact tracing. But when I posted this information on my social media, I was already getting pushback from people that, oh, no, I don't think so, that's right. How would you feel about that in the context, the fact that Informatica is a data company? You know, how do you balance out privacy with respect to handling the challenges of coronavirus that has really brought our economy down to our knees?
I would have taken the 5th on this question, but I'll go ahead and attempt to answer it. It's definitely a difficult question. Look, first of all, to keep the company aside, we provide a technology and solutions to companies to basically go about doing their work. And obviously in the context of the regulations, our customers go about doing their work. So we obviously don't get engaged in that ourselves directly. So that's at least as a company how we operate. So my perspective, personal perspective on this one is that when you asked me the question earlier, how the world will change, I do think the world will change. And I'll give you some historical context. Facebook proved to a lot of us that we are very willing to share a lot of our personal data out there. And you know, I mean, people are willing to do that. I mean, you know, very willingly going out there and putting all their personal information and what they're doing, what they want to go, where they would like to go, where they are, what they are eating, all that kind of stuff. Which, by the way, if you ask somebody in a survey, would you be willing to share that data to complete strangers? They would say no, but they did that. So it changed the social fulcrum in a way where people felt very uncomfortable in doing certain things, but became very comfortable. So I do think that what happens is, and I obviously I don't know, this is a crystal ball question. I do think that when it comes to things like that, a healthcare crisis can really create risk for a community. I think people will probably end up changing. I'm not now. So I think that there will be some change. I can't predict that. I mean, today I've been seeing the news that a lot of people were protesting in front of the Michigan governor's office because she probably asked them to stay home for a little, close down a certain set of businesses that they thought were essential. I think there will be a push and pull, and by the way, that's a great part of the American fabric. But I think that there will be something that will change for sure, Rishi. I do think so, and I use the Facebook example just to share where those questions, people, if you ask somebody, will say, nope, I am never going to tell somebody that I'm on a vacation eating a nice crab by the ocean, but people do that.
Correct. So it seemingly is a cultural shift that needs to happen in America. And it's a question of, perhaps it could be as drastic a situation as, our future of the whole economy depends on this. There are countries.
And by the way, I think different places will take that decision differently also. I think this will also test out different parts of the country, different parts of the world will make different decisions also. It will not be one size fits all kind of decisions also, Rishi.
Correct. And when we see countries of the world moving forward and addressing the challenge in a very specific manner, I think that'll put the pressure upon the United States also. Otherwise, you'll be falling behind. There are a couple of questions I would love to have Dave Eddings, and then after that, we have Vijay who has a question. So Dave, would you mind unmuting yourself? He's got a question on COVID's impact to continued cloud adoption.
Yeah, hi, Dave Eddings here, working in a services company with InfoObjects, and our focus is often data analytics and implementation as a provider. And, obviously, I think one of the things I've seen over the years is that there's been over and over again, data pushing the adoption to the cloud, but particularly more in the analytics space, right? So, as I said, big data is what we do, not because we choose, but what the clients want to do. I think a big part of that actually somewhat dovetails into, what we're experiencing in the conversations moments ago about, contact tracing. And enterprises are concerned about their data and the privacy that goes with it. Mm-hmm. So do you think, and I sort of have maybe a hypothesis, my own, but I'm curious, from your perspective and far more expertise, do you think that, what we're experiencing now in the remote workplace and then COVID, is that going to help lead, production data into the cloud?
I think my short answer to that, Dave, is yes. I've been talking to a lot of customers across the globe, and I think I'll give you the answer and I'll give you some tailwinds behind that. Look, typically, as I said, what will happen is that two things will happen in any situation like this. One is a very natural thing. You see there's a contraction of the economy. Obviously, companies are going to try to obviously manage their income statements, balance sheets. Obviously, they'll be needless to say they will reduce their cost structures. But what happens classically, if you follow any economic change like this, demand comes back. But when demand comes back, your ability to bring your capacity back in terms of people, resource capacity, you can never do that at the same pace. Cloud allows you the ability to definitely create that scale very quickly. So by just a simple law of that, cloud will have a natural tailwind to that cloud adoption will increase. Second is, cloud allows you to start small. You can scale your way up. The cost of basically experimenting something is very low, which again is very natural because even when you are about to come out of it, you say, I want to start something new. I had paused it. Let me at least begin small, then I will see how it goes. And then you like it and you just scale and the infrastructure you go. And then third one is that digital transformation, which has been a huge driver behind cloud, is just not going to stop. Everything is getting digitized and everything will get even more so digitized. So I think the scale of the things that we will talk about here will just make cloud a lot more natural for them to do. So all of those tailwinds that I see, Dave, fundamentally leads me towards that cloud will be a natural winner in this.
Good. I like that. Let's go to the next question with Vijay. Vijay.
Hi, it's Vijay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. This is Vijay from San Ramon. Hey, Amit. Hey, Rishi.
Hey, Vijay.
So yeah, I totally agree with you on the cloud. I think the elasticity of the cloud definitely is probably beneficial to some of the companies in this market. When traffic has gone down, they can scale up and down easily. My question is around small businesses, and small businesses obviously are getting impacted in a big way with this situation we currently are in. And the risk here is that organizations which have scaled, the bigger companies, would be able to permanently take share from them. So do you envision, and obviously big companies have advantage in terms of data and the volume of data they collect and the resources they have available to process the data. Do you see a situation where actually companies like Informatica or the cloud companies actually provide an advantage to small businesses to come back after the shock?
So I think first I'll give you my own perspective. When I look at the world of technology, the world we operate in, we're a small business. We're a medium business, not a small business ourselves. When we look at the behemoths that we end up partnering with or working with them, and they are just ginormous, hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue company or tens of billions of dollar revenue companies, Vijay, myself. But I think you raise a good point. That's the point I was making way up front when Rishi and I were chatting that, look, I do worry in a time like this, when I said there is a haves and have-nots in an individual economy, right, the 1% and the non-1%, I do think that in our economy, there are certain companies that have disproportionate amount of resources. And by the way, you'll see that they will go through any of this without even having a hiccup because they just have disproportionate resources. And then there's a middle where people have resources, but not disproportionate, they will suffer. And then there's a real small and medium business that will bear the brunt of the impact. And I do think that is very unfair. I do think that's very unfair. And now, what is a policy way of going through it is hard for me to opine. But I do think that as a country, we have to figure out a way where we just don't, any systemic shock like this should not further create what I call value creation for the largest of the largest entities, because I do also think that innovation dies in that context. A lot of innovation in this country and in this economy has been created by, what are startups? Startups are nothing else but small businesses when they begin. And then they become medium and then they become large. So I do think that we have to find a way there. So I hear your concern. I relatively share your concern. And I do think that now in that context, when you ask us, we obviously, for a couple of kind of companies who are in the healthcare pharma space, we provided our technology for a period of time free for them. We obviously can't provide free forever. We live in an economic environment, but we've done our relative share of it, but I do share your concern.
So, Amit, I'm going to jump track slightly and we'll talk a little bit about Silicon Valley because you touched upon it earlier where, we used to have challenges with hiring people and talent was sort of, there's an exodus of people leaving Silicon Valley. And the story is that in 2015, we had a total of 24,000 people who came into Silicon Valley, a net. And then in 2017, we had a net 3,000 people who ended up leaving Silicon Valley. So that's been the trend, and it's going to be a different world. But, we talk about basically fixing the transportation challenge we have. And what I've talked about is we should have done that in 2001 when we had the dot-com bust. And that's where we should have spent money and we should have done something to see how we could solve the traffic gridlock because it has continued to get exponentially bad every single year. So is this the right time that, it's like not really a data question, but in terms of an investment, would you like to see an investment in infrastructure happen right here in Silicon Valley to position us as the innovation economy for the foreseeable future? Or there is a danger we might lose that spot as this whole thing plays out. What's your take on that, Amit?
So I think that, look, philosophically, Silicon Valley's place as a tech powerhouse, we should assume that it is under threat. It's kind of like, when you reach the number one position, I always tell my own teams, you talked about the fact that we are leaders in the Gartner Magic Quadrants. And I said, when you reach the top, where can you go? You can only go down. So you have to work even harder to stay at the top. So I think Silicon Valley has the same challenge. We reached the top. I think it was a lot of things that helped us. And I think staying there takes hard work. And I think it's very easy to get complacent and feel like, oh, it'll just work out. You can't let that happen. So I don't disagree that we have to work towards that and work hard. And I do think that Silicon Valley is on the third, given that obviously, and it may not happen tomorrow, day after tomorrow. And that's the hardest part. You don't see it when it happens gradually. It starts slow, and then it can suddenly accelerate at some point. So I do think that is happening. To your point, look, I believe in never let a crisis go be not taken as an opportunity. This is an opportunity. When you talk about infrastructure, and so many different ways, why wouldn't infrastructure not help? Commuting is a philosophically huge problem in Silicon Valley. It's a drain on productivity. It's a drain on family life. The one thing I don't miss about sitting in front of Zoom is that, yes, I may work 8 long hours, but at least when I get out of my office, I just directly go to my kitchen and I can hang out with my kids and my wife, versus getting in a car and drive for 1 hour and get back to work, or get back to home or go to work. So I do think that those are things that, and they also create employment, because there's going to be definitely a short to medium term employment challenge within our economy. So I agree with that those are long-term value creators. And I do think in short and medium term, there will be also economic value creators, because it provides employment, which means that more money to people to go out and spend. And by the way, where will those people spend? Small and medium businesses. Those people end up going to small and medium businesses more than anything else.
Correct. Very good points, Amit. Very good points. And Gary Tasser, he's making some comments. He says that contact tracing is key, as nothing is more important than health. And then I see one more comment from Gary that COVID effect on SMB is huge. And to add what you were talking about SMB, and $350 billion is gone. So Gary, you want to make any comment on that? I don't know if Gary's still there.
Gary, you're on mute. He's speaking, but he's on mute, I guess.
Okay, let's.
Yeah. No, I was not on mute.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Gary, you're okay now.
Okay. So I'm a accountant and IT guy, 20 years in IT, and then always been in accounting. Now back to accounting, and I work with small businesses, and I see the rampant effect of it. And I'm a very proactive person. As soon as I learned, I send all the people, okay, apply for EIDL and PPP. Half the people applied, some got, some didn't get it. But that's not enough. 2.5 months of pay is not enough with these people. And now they're coming up with another 250 billion. I think priorities are not set right. And SB is such a big, again, the question of data. SB have the data, and they had that proper tool. They could have basically arrange this money in a better way to whoever is needing the most, given them the most, as opposed to everybody giving $1,000, $2,000, $3,000.
Well, look, I mean, I think obviously it's hard. I mean, I go back, I look at it this way, that there is a dole out you can do. And I think let's just first take a step back. At least as an economy, we have the ability to give out 350 billion. And obviously it's a big, a huge amount of money that's being rolled out across a large swath of industries. You know, the airlines are hurt so bad. I mean, I was reading, I mean, I fly United a lot, and this morning I saw the United CEO's email. I mean, literally they're down to zero. That's literally the amount of air travel that's happening, right? My take is that, like we were talking, like there is an element of, if we create investment in certain areas, like we talked about infrastructure, creating employment for a certain set of people, I think let's look at those things that we can do that help us in the long term, but also create natural investment for the small and medium businesses. Let's look at this one. Your local barber shop, your local sandwich shop, your local bagel shop. Those are the kind of places where a lot of people go when there is enough, employment happening at the very lowest of the lowest levels, which get hurt in a time like this. So if we can find ways to create employment, that barring giving 350 or 500, then we can also create what I call inflow for the small and medium businesses. I mean, we have a local bagel shop. I think for all of you who live in Saratoga, know Saratoga Bagels. I go there at the place we frequent. We get our bagels from there. We get coffee from there. I used to get my regular morning coffee as I drive to work. I have tried to keep that tradition alive, even though I have to wear a mask and go, but I try to get my morning coffee from them. And because I understand that the pain for them, it must be severe, and that's the least I can do. I'm not saying that that'll help them a lot, but that still does something for them. So I think finding ways to create economics that can provide inflow to them is a better way of doing it. At some point, 350, 500 will still run out.
That's right. Yep.
Good. So any further questions? I'm sort of getting to my very last question for Amit, and which is really the final words of advice. Amit, you are companies here, whether they are data-driven companies or in any other space, what's your word of advice, or perhaps even to startups that have been conceived right now? How would you provide them perspective in terms of how they should march forward, given the situations we are in?
I had to do that for myself. As I said, like I took over the job earlier this year, and this is not something that I had in any way, shape, or form planned that would hit me. I mean, I think it's hard, but the only thing I would advise everybody to think about is there is a long term. I'll say that life is a series of short terms and a long terms. There is no long term without a short term, and there is no short term without a long term, right? So yes, in the short term, there is pain, there is despair, we all have to make sure that we can focus on few things that matter: health, family. Those things are more important than anything else, right? And then there is a long term. I do think that we'll come out of it. Yes, some of us will probably come out of it with more pain than others, but we will come out of it. We absolutely will. And we have to have that belief. I mean, if we don't have hope and belief, then everything we can give up. So I think that's the best way to approach in general any problem. And I think that's the only way I have looked at things, that have a long-term perspective and then look at the short term and see what matters most. And to be in a time like this, hey, focus on your health, focus on your family. And like Rishi, you said, if you get your kids at your home and this is the only time you'll get all the whole family together, make the most out of it. While it may be hard to get lunch done for them in time, but still, there is a blessing in disguise over there.
Well said, Amit. Well said. Are there any? Oh, here is Amita. Amita has a question.
Yeah, hi Rishi. Yeah, I have a question. So I mean, so it's very tricky question. So maybe companies like Informatica, can they turn into supporting the very new ideas? I'm from India, so I'm seeing a clear-cut divide between the people. I mean, there are people who are supporting very new ideas, and there are people who are into trolling. So for example, I mean.
I lost you, Anita. I can't hear you anymore. Yeah, I think
we lost Amita there. Hopefully, Amita will be back. And so Amit, let's see if there's. Oh, here is Rahul. Rahul, go ahead. Unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Rishi. Hi, Amit. I've been noodling on the thought around, as individuals, when things go south, the gig economy has really been something that has given individuals an opportunity to sort of turn around their lives, right? Whether it is to leverage platforms like Uber or Airbnb or what have you, take latent capacity and turn it into something that generates revenue for you. And I was thinking, in a COVID world or post-COVID world, this could potentially also create an opportunity for enterprises. An example that comes to mind is restaurants, right? If I'm a chain of restaurants and I have to shutter my business because of the situation, maybe it creates an opportunity to turn this around into a service to create potentially a ghost kitchen or a cloud kitchen type of an idea that allows me to take my capacity and turn it over to others who have demand for, say, home delivery types of businesses or what have you. So just want to get your take on whether there's an opportunity here for us to explore the notion that enterprises, or just as a thesis, that enterprises could essentially go gig.
No, I hear you. So first of all, Rahul is a good buddy of mine, so he put me on the spot. Rahul and we went to school together. So Rahul, thanks for putting me on the spot over here. I agree with you. I mean, I'll give you, actually, you raise a very good point. I do think that there will be things like that will happen. And the best, I've been noodling on this one myself. So I don't know how many of you know Flights. Obviously, it's a local chain of bar, right? I mean, we all, some of you must have gone there for a drink. And somebody was telling me the other day that Flights obviously is also converted itself to where you can go get grocery, apparently, because apparently they obviously have they have a supply chain where they've been getting food because they make, obviously, it's a bar and food restaurant place, right? So they know that. So they've converted themselves to selling some kind of grocery, which was very interesting for me. That's what they would have thought of. It's quite intriguing, right? That a bar in a time like this, where people can go get food, not cooked food. So I think, Rahul, I agree with you. In fact, what further intrigued me is that I think if a lot of you track, like in a lot of cities, like we have an office in Dublin. I'll give you that example. In Dublin, Ireland, by the way, not Dublin, California. It's again like where a lot of companies have set up, tech companies set up their offices. A lot of young folks who just get out of college go there to work. There are a lot of restaurants over there through Uber Eats and everything that are only catering to delivering food, because all of these young kids out there don't cook, they just order food. So the restaurants over there have just catered to just literally delivering. They have no seating capacity, just a kitchen. So I do think that there is something going to happen. And I think it also improves the productivity of every asset the enterprise has. So the answer is yes. I think we'll see. And I think like you said, every tectonic shift like this creates tons of new things. And I do think this will create an opportunity like that.
Good. I like that question and got Amit to think a little bit, I guess, but it was a really good response. And so we are at the end of this. Amit is a busy man. I really appreciate Amit taking the time to join us. And what I would like to do is just provide a quick summary of what I heard from Amit. And my two key takeaways, let me just unpin the video. My two key takeaways is this, essentially, with respect to what Amit was talking about. And I think America needs to become a data-driven economy. When you look at making economic stimulus choices or looking at key economic indicators to figure out what needs to be done from a policy standpoint, I think that is completely lacking today. And that needs to be addressed, that needs to be fixed, because the sooner we do that, we can get out of a crisis like coronavirus and out into a different world. And that's the magic of what a data-driven policy can do for us. We can make the right choices and ensure that we are able to address the challenges of a downhill economy, or perhaps to an economy that is dealing with inflation. So that is the imperative. Secondly, when we talk about the privacy, the contact tracing, it's a very, very important aspect of how we will get out of this. The test kits, seemingly we are addressing that. The vaccinations, we are addressing that. But in the interim, for us to get out of this, the major issue we have right now, where we are everybody's getting very frustrated. In fact, the kids have been frustrated. The parents are trying to keep them busy. So we ended up launching a shelter-in-home coding program. Next week, it's starting on Monday, where we are teaching middle school and high school students, and also college students, what does it take? How does it take the coding principles, but also what does it take to roll out startups? And that's the 1 hour class Monday through Thursday, and then the Friday they actually spend time putting together their startup plan. So that's what is going on, because it's a new world, it's a new economy, but it has to lead to a change in culture. So the sooner we can get out of this, how do we do that? With contact tracing. So we have to make some sort of a compromise in terms of the culture that has been defined for America. But for us to have a place in the economy, we'll have to make some sort of compromises. And that's what I also heard from Amit loud and clear. And what he talked about also was the agility of companies to step up and make quick decisions and see how they can turn an adversity into an opportunity. So these were really good thoughts, Amit. Thank you so much for sharing. And I really appreciate all of you joining in. It was a fabulous discussion. See you back next Thursday with Tech Thursday. And in fact, it's a daily occurrence, reality check with Rishi, 6:30 p.m. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Bye.
Thank you, Rishi. Take care, everyone.